There are moments in life when your body understands something long before your mind is willing to accept it. You walk into a room and suddenly your chest tightens for no reason. A message appears on your phone and your peace disappears before you even read it. Someone says your name with the same voice they have always used, yet something inside you quietly pulls away. And the strangest part is, you try to explain it to yourself. You tell yourself you are overthinking, too sensitive, too emotional, too distant lately. But deep down, there is another voice, a quieter one that has been trying to protect you for longer than you realize. Because sometimes your spirit notices danger before your heart is ready to let go. And maybe that is why this feeling has followed you lately. Not because you hate them, not because you want conflict, but because something sacred inside you no longer feels safe around what once felt familiar. There is a grief that nobody talks about enough. The grief of realizing that someone you loved began to feel emotionally unsafe. Not physically dangerous, not openly cruel, just heavy, confusing, draining, like your soul had to shrink itself every time they entered the room. And for a while, you ignored it. You kept giving chances. You kept explaining their behavior away. You kept remembering the version of them you hoped would return. Because human beings do this all the time. We fall in love with memories. We become loyal to potential. We stay attached to old warmth long after the fire has already gone cold. But eventually, something changes. You stop feeling relaxed around them. Your laughter becomes careful. Your words become edited. Your nervous system stays alert, even during silence. And that is not random. Your spirit was never designed to thrive in places where it must constantly protect itself. Some people can wound you without ever raising their voice. They do it through inconsistency, through emotional unpredictability, through subtle disrespect disguised as jokes, through making you feel too much one day and invisible the next. And what makes this kind of pain difficult is that it leaves no obvious evidence. You cannot point to one dramatic moment. It is 1,000 tiny moments, tiny disappointments, tiny betrayals, tiny dismissals, tiny moments where your soul quietly whispered, something feels wrong here. But because not looked catastrophic from the outside, you stayed. You questioned yourself instead. You wondered if maybe you expected too much. Maybe you were becoming cold. Maybe healing had made you difficult to love. Yet the truth is, healed people often stop tolerating what wounded versions of themselves once accepted. And that realization changes everything. Because there comes a point where your spirit gets tired of surviving environments your heart keeps trying to romanticize. You begin noticing how exhausted you feel after talking to them, how peaceful you feel when they are absent, how your mind clears when their energy is far away from yours. That contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Peace reveals what chaos had normalized. And maybe that is what has been happening to you. Maybe you thought you were losing connection with them. But in reality, you are reconnecting with yourself. Sometimes God does not remove people immediately. Sometimes He lets the discomfort grow slowly, not to punish you, but to awaken you. Because if certain exits happened too early, you would run back to what broke you simply because it still felt familiar. So instead, your spirit begins noticing things your ease used to overlook. The conversations that leave you anxious, the interactions that make you doubt yourself, the subtle feeling that you are emotionally safer alone than emotionally exposed around them. That feeling matters more than you think. There are people who know how to access your empathy but have no idea how to protect your heart. People who enjoy your presence but cannot handle your truth. People who love the comfort you provide while quietly draining the life out of your spirit. And the painful part is, many of them are not evil. Some are simply wounded, disconnected, emotionally immature, carrying storms they never learned how to calm. But understanding someone's pain does not mean you must abandon your own. That lesson takes many people years to learn. Because compassionate souls often confuse empathy with responsibility. They think loving someone means enduring endless emotional instability. They think patience means self-abandonment. They think staying loyal means staying silent about their own suffering. But your spirit was never meant to become a sacrifice just to keep someone else comfortable. Read that again in your heart. Your spirit was never meant to become a sacrifice just to keep someone else comfortable. And maybe that sentence alone explains why something inside you has been pulling away lately. You have changed, not in the cold way people accuse you of. In the honest way healing changes a person. You are beginning to recognize how expensive certain connections have become. You notice how your energy disappears after certain conversations, how your body becomes tense around certain people, how your intuition keeps trying to interrupt the stories your loneliness wants to continue believing, because loneliness can make people stay attached to things that are slowly destroying them. Not because they are weak, but because human beings naturally fear endings, especially endings involving people who once felt like home. And that is the hardest part. Sometimes the people who damage your peace are the same people who once gave you comfort. That contradiction can confuse the soul deeply. You keep comparing who they are now to who they used to be. You replay old memories searching for reassurance. You wait for the warmth to return. But meanwhile, your spirit keeps whispering the truth. You do not feel safe anymore. And emotional safety, it's not a small thing. It is one of the holiest experiences a human being can feel. To relax around someone, to speak honestly without fear, to exist without constantly preparing for disappointment, to feel emotionally held instead of emotionally monitored. That kind of safety changes people. It allows the nervous system to rest. It allows the heart to open naturally. It allows love to breathe without anxiety suffocating it. And once your spirit experiences genuine peace, it becomes harder to tolerate emotional confusion disguised as connection. That is why some relationships begin falling apart after you heal. Not because healing ruined the relationship, but because healing exposed what your survival instincts once ignored. You start realizing how much of your old love was rooted in fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of disappointing others, fear of walking away from people you invested years into. But eventually, your soul reaches exhaustion. And exhaustion reveals truths denial cannot hide forever. You stop wanting to explain yourself repeatedly. You stop chasing clarity from people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for emotional consistency. You stop shrinking your feelings to make others more comfortable. Not because you became heartless, because your spirit finally became tired of bleeding silently. There is a specific kind of heartbreak that comes from realizing someone only knew how to love the version of you that tolerated pain quietly, the version that overgave, over-explained, over-forgave, the version that ignored its own intuition to preserve connection. But once you start honoring yourself differently, some people become uncomfortable because boundaries expose dynamics that convenience once kept hidden. And suddenly, people who benefited from your silence begin calling your growth selfish. People who ignored your emotional needs begin accusing you of changing. People who never protected your heart begin acting shocked when you finally protected yourself. That moment can feel incredibly lonely because growth often separates you from environments that once felt emotionally familiar. And familiar does not always mean healthy. Sometimes familiar simply means repeated pain, repeated disappointment, repeated emotional confusion. Many people stay in emotionally unsafe situations because unpredictability begins. They're normal long ago. So when peace finally appears, it feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. But peace is not empty. Peace is not boring. Peace is what your soul sounds like when fear stops speaking over it. And maybe that is why your spirit has been restless lately. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something is wrong with you. But because something inside you is finally refusing to betray itself anymore. You have spent too much time trying to earn softness from people who only offered conditional care. Too much time trying to explain wounds to people committed to misunderstanding them. Too much time abandoning your own emotional reality just to maintain connection. That kind of survival changes a person slowly. You begin doubting your own intuition, apologizing for your emotions, questioning your reactions, silencing your discomfort. And after enough time, you become disconnected from yourself. Not dramatically, quietly, like someone lowering the volume of their own soul little by little, until one day you realize you do not recognize your inner peace anymore. That realization hurts, but it also awakens something powerful, because awareness is the beginning of return. The moment you notice what? He drains. Your spirit is the moment healing begins pulling you back toward yourself. And healing rarely starts with confidence. Sometimes it starts with exhaustion, with finally admitting that something no longer feels right, with finally listening to the tension in your body instead of overriding it, with finally accepting that your spirit deserves environments where it can breathe. There are people listening to this right now who have spent years carrying emotional weight they were never meant to carry, trying to save everyone, trying to fix every misunderstanding, trying to preserve relationships at the cost of their own mental and emotional well-being. And somewhere along the way, they forgot what safety even feels like. Maybe that is you. Maybe you became so used to emotional inconsistency that peace now feels unfamiliar. Maybe you learned to stay hyper-aware of other people's moods because survival once depended on it. Maybe you became an expert at reading emotional tension before words were ever spoken. And maybe that skill protected you once, but it also exhausted you, because no human being is meant to live in a constant state of emotional alertness. Your soul needs rest too. Your heart needs gentleness too. Your nervous system deserves relationships where love does not feel like emotional survival. And one of the deepest forms of healing is finally admitting when your spirit no longer feels safe somewhere, even if your mind still wants to hold on, even if your memories still ache, even if part of you still hopes things will change. Sometimes God protects people by making their spirit uncomfortable before their life completely breaks apart. Think about that carefully. Not every discomfort is punishment. Some discomfort is divine interruption, a sacred warning, an inner resistance trying to keep your soul from settling where it no longer belongs. And people ignore this all the time because they want certainty before they trust themselves. They want dramatic proof, visible betrayal, obvious endings. But many spiritual shifts happen quietly first, through emotional heaviness, through inner exhaustion, through the loss of peace around certain energies. And if you keep ignoring those signals, eventually your body begins carrying what your soul has been trying to say. Fatigue, anxiety, emotional numbness, restlessness, because unspoken truth always finds another. Her language eventually. Your spirit speaks through feelings long before your mind creates explanations. That is why some people can smile at you while something inside you still feels unsettled. Energy speaks before words do. And emotionally intelligent people feel this deeply, especially those who spent years learning how to survive emotionally unpredictable environments. They notice tone changes, silence shifts, emotional distance, unspoken resentment, things others overlook completely. And sometimes they blame themselves for sensing too much. But sensitivity is not weakness. In the right environment, sensitivity becomes wisdom. It becomes discernment. It becomes the ability to recognize what your soul can no longer survive pretending is healthy. You know what is strange? Many people only realize how unsafe something was after they finally leave it. Only after distance returns clarity. They look back and suddenly understand why they felt anxious all the time, why they constantly second-guessed themselves, why their bodies stayed tense, why they felt emotionally drained despite trying so hard to make things work. Because survival mode can feel normal while you are inside it. But peace reveals everything differently. And once you experience emotional safety, your spirit begins grieving all the years it spent accepting less. That grief is real. Not just grief for the relationship, grief for yourself, for the version of you that kept abandoning its own intuition, hoping love would finally feel safe. That realization can bring tears people do not understand, because the pain is not only about what happened. It is about how long you convinced yourself to endure it. But do not punish yourself for that. Human beings stay attached to hope longer than they should sometimes, especially when love, history, loneliness, and emotional memory become tangled together. You were trying to preserve connection. You were trying to believe the best. You were trying to keep your heart open. There is nothing shameful about that. What matters now is that your spirit is waking up. You are beginning to notice what costs too much emotionally. You are beginning to understand that peace is not something you beg for from other people. It is something you protect. And protecting your peace will disappoint people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. That is unavoidable. Not everyone will. I'll celebrate your healing. Some people only felt comfortable with the version of you that ignored its own pain. But your healing is not betrayal. Your healing is return. Return to your intuition. Return to your emotional truth. Return to the part of yourself that always knew something was wrong but stayed silent out of fear. And maybe this season of your life is about learning to trust that inner voice again, the quiet voice beneath the overthinking. The voice that notices how your energy shifts around certain people. The voice that feels heaviness even when words sound kind. The voice that keeps asking for peace instead of performance. Because your spirit is not asking for perfection. It is asking for safety, for honesty, for emotional consistency, for relationships where love does not require self-erasure. And despite everything you have been through, that kind of connection still exists. Not everyone will drain you. Not everyone will manipulate your empathy. Not everyone will make you feel emotionally alone while standing beside you. There are people whose presence calms the nervous system instead of activating it. People who communicate clearly. People who apologize sincerely. People who protect your heart instead of testing its limits constantly. People who do not force your spirit into survival mode. But you cannot recognize those connections clearly while constantly attached to environments that keep your soul exhausted. That is why some endings become necessary. Not because love never existed, but because peace disappeared. And without peace, love slowly becomes confusion, then exhaustion, then grief. Some viewers listening right now already know exactly who this message is about. You felt it in the first few minutes. A face appeared in your mind immediately, not because you hate them, but because your spirit has been carrying tension your mouth never fully admitted aloud. And maybe you kept waiting for a sign, something undeniable, something clear enough to justify what you already feel internally. But sometimes the sign is the loss of peace itself. Sometimes the sign is how small you become around them, how anxious you feel afterward, how your body relaxes when they leave. That matters. Your peace matters. Your spirit matters. The way you feel around people matters more than you were taught to believe. And perhaps the most beautiful part of healing is this. Eventually, you stop chasing people who require you to betray yourself to keep them. You stop forcing closeness where your soul feels unsafe. You stop confusing emotional attachment with emotional alignment. You stop treating discomfort like something you must endlessly tolerate. And slowly, gently, your spirit begins returning home to itself. That return does not happen overnight. Some days you will still miss people who hurt you. Some nights loneliness will try convincing you to reopen doors your soul fought hard to close. Some memories will still ache. Healing is rarely linear, but peace becomes easier to recognize once you have nearly lost yourself searching for it. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you will notice something different. Your breathing feels lighter. Your thoughts become quieter. Your nervous system stops preparing for emotional impact constantly. You laugh without forcing it. You sleep without replaying conversations in your head. You feel emotionally present again, alive again, safe again. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because your spirit finally stopped living somewhere it had to protect itself every second. That changes a human being deeply. And maybe that is what God was trying to lead you toward all along. Not isolation, not bitterness, not fear of people, but discernment, the wisdom to recognize when love and peace are no longer living in the same place, the courage to honor what your spirit has been trying to say quietly for a very long time, and the faith to believe that protecting your inner peace is not selfish, it is sacred. Because the truth is, your spirit knew before your mind accepted it. Your body knew before your excuses ended. Your peace knew before your loyalty let go. And maybe that is why this message found you now. Not to make you fearful, not to make you cold, but to remind you that your soul deserves environments where it does not have to survive love, only receive it.